Alex stared at the wedding invitation in his hand, his mind racing. The ornate envelope with its golden script seemed to mock him. It was addressed to him, but the name that stood out was his ex-wife's. The invitation was for her wedding. His ex was getting remarried, and somehow he had been included on the guest list. She had moved on. And now it was his turn to do the same, but the thought of attending was unbearable. Not just because of her, but because of everything the event represented, the life she had built without him. He ran a hand through his hair as he sat on the edge of his leather chair. The invitation remained unopened on the desk in front of him, but it seemed to pulse with an annoying urgency. Alex had made his peace with the divorce years ago, but something about this day, about the wedding, unsettled him. Maybe it was the fact that it would be the first time they'd see each other face to face since the divorce. Maybe it was the knowing glances of people who still knew him as the man who'd been married to her, the man who had lost everything. He picked up the invitation, his thumb brushing over the delicate paper. He wondered if he even wanted to go. Could he stand it? Could he endure the awkwardness of being surrounded by her friends, her family, people who once knew him as her husband? His thoughts swirled, but one thing became clear. He couldn't show up alone. That would be too humiliating, too obvious that he hadn't moved on. He needed a date, someone who could blend in, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. Alex leaned back in his chair, eyes wandering toward the window that overlooked the city skyline. His life was far from normal. As the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, he had everything anyone could want: luxury cars, an expansive penthouse, private jets, and a business empire. But none of it felt fulfilling. There were days when he longed for something simpler, something real. But his reality had become one of constant pressure, endless meetings, and superficial connections. His relationships, both romantic and professional, were often transactional. He missed the days when life felt less complicated, when he was just a regular guy trying to make it. He knew people, of course. The city was full of people who loved to rub shoulders with him because of his success. But none of them were the kind of person he could bring to something as personal as this wedding. None of them would understand. The last thing he needed was for one of his high society acquaintances to make things more awkward with their questions or their pitying looks. No, he needed someone who wouldn't even know who he was, someone who could just show up, enjoy the night, and leave without all the emotional baggage attached. It was a ridiculous idea, but as Alex stared at the invitation, it seemed to make sense. He needed a stranger, a random person. And with that thought, he felt a sense of relief, as though a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He stood up abruptly and made his way to the door, a plan forming in his mind. He grabbed his coat from the back of the chair and stepped outside. The crisp evening air hit him immediately, but he barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere. A few blocks down from his office was a cafe, a quiet, unassuming place where he sometimes stopped for coffee. He wasn't one for public places like this. He preferred his own private spaces, but today, something about the little cafe called to him. The warm glow from the windows and the sound of the barista's cheerful greeting as he stepped inside felt oddly comforting. It wasn't about the coffee. It was about finding someone who could help him out of this awkward situation. The cafe wasn't busy. A few people sat at the tables, deep in their own conversations or buried in books. He stood near the counter waiting for his coffee when a voice broke through his thoughts. "Is it for here or to go?" The voice was light and friendly, and Alex looked up to see a young woman behind the counter. She had dark hair pulled into a messy bun and a warm smile that made him pause. "For here," he replied, handing over a crisp bill as she prepared his order. He noticed her eyes flicker briefly to his expensive suit, the designer shoes, but she didn't say anything about it. She wasn't judging him. She was just doing her job. The coffee was handed over, and Alex took a sip before realizing he had no real plan. What was he doing? He didn't know this woman, didn't even know her name. Yet he felt this strange pull, an odd curiosity. She seemed so normal. The moment passed, and he quickly pushed the thought aside. He turned to leave, but as he reached the door, he stopped. Maybe it was the thought of the wedding looming over him, or maybe it was just an instinct, but he found himself walking back to the counter. "Excuse me," he said, his voice hesitant. "I have a bit of an odd request." The woman behind the counter looked up, a questioning expression on her face. "Oh? I have to go to an event," he said, "and I need a date." His words hung in the air for a moment, almost as if he couldn't believe he was saying them. "It's for a wedding. My ex-wife's wedding, actually. I was wondering if you'd be willing to come with me, just as a date." The woman blinked, clearly caught off guard. "A wedding? Your ex-wife's?" "Yeah," Alex continued, trying to explain. "It's awkward, and I don't want to show up alone. It's a bit last minute, I know. I just need someone who can go with me. No questions asked." She stared at him, her hands still poised over the counter as though unsure how to respond. Alex couldn't read her expression. Was she amused, curious, or was she simply deciding whether he was serious? "You want me to be your date at your ex's wedding?" she asked, still processing the idea. "You don't know me." "I know it sounds crazy," he said, trying to sound more convincing. "But it's a weird situation. I just thought it might be easier if I brought a total stranger, someone who won't make it more awkward." The barista laughed softly, almost nervously. "You're serious, aren't you?" "Dead serious," he said, nodding. She paused, her gaze turning thoughtful as she weighed the idea. "Well, I've never done something like this before," she said. "But I guess it could be fun." "Why not?" She shrugged. "It'll be an interesting experience." Alex felt a wave of relief flood through him. He couldn't believe it. "Great," he said, offering a grateful smile. "Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm Emily, by the way," she added, finally offering her name with a smile. "Alex," he replied, extending his hand. And just like that, an arrangement had been made. And Alex felt as if a huge burden had been lifted from him. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best option he had. He'd found his date for the wedding, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions, someone who wouldn't judge him. As he walked out of the cafe, he couldn't help but wonder what this strange decision would lead to. For the first time in a long while, he felt something akin to hope, but he quickly pushed those thoughts aside. He had a wedding to attend, and with Emily by his side, maybe it wouldn't be as bad as he imagined. The wedding day arrived too quickly for Alex's liking. He hadn't expected the rush of emotions to hit him as hard as they did, but now, standing in front of his closet, staring at his reflection in the full-length mirror, he felt a knot in his stomach. The tuxedo, the polished shoes, the tie, everything was in place. He looked perfect, yet something was missing. He couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong here, that he was about to step into an event that was meant for someone else. His mind kept drifting back to Emily, the girl he had met just days ago in that coffee shop. She was an absolute stranger, yet here she was, his date to his ex-wife's wedding. She didn't know him in any way that mattered. She didn't know about his wealth, his business empire, or his past with his ex. Emily only knew him as a man who had randomly asked her to attend a wedding. But that was the beauty of it, wasn't it? No expectations. No pretense. Just two people thrown together by circumstance. He checked his watch. Almost time to go. Alex let out a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. His entire life he had been surrounded by people who knew exactly who he was, who had expectations about him. But here, in this moment, he was just a man who needed someone to sit next to him at a wedding. It wasn't much, but it was all he could think of right now. He grabbed his keys from the counter and stepped out of his penthouse, the city stretching before him like an endless sea of lights. He couldn't avoid the upcoming event, no matter how much he wanted to. The car ride was quiet, just the soft hum of the engine as it took him to the venue. Alex's thoughts drifted to Emily again. What would she be like in that environment? Would she be uncomfortable, out of place among the high society crowd? He couldn't help but feel responsible for how she would fit into that world. He shook his head, trying to clear the thoughts. She had agreed to come with him after all. She wasn't being forced into this. Alex could only hope that the evening would go smoothly, and that Emily wouldn't feel as out of place as he suspected she might. As he pulled up to the grand venue, his heart rate picked up. The building was massive, standing like a monument to wealth and excess. Alex had been to many events in places like this, but today, something felt different. The day he had dreaded for so long was finally here, and it was about to begin. He stepped out of the car and made his way to the entrance, only to stop dead in his tracks when he saw Emily standing by the front doors. She looked nothing like the nervous barista he had met a few days ago. In a deep blue gown that clung to her curves just right, her dark hair flowing in soft waves around her shoulders, she looked every bit the part of a woman who belonged at a high-end wedding. Alex felt a pang of surprise. This wasn't just the girl who had agreed to be his date. She looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. But what struck him more than her appearance was the way she stood, relaxed and poised, as though she had done this 1,000 times before. "Emily," Alex said, his voice a little quieter than usual. She turned to face him, offering a warm smile. "Hi, Alex, you look, well, very polished." She said it with a light laugh, clearly trying to ease the tension between them. Alex smiled back, feeling a strange warmth flood his chest. She was making this easier than he had expected. He had prepared for awkwardness, for moments of discomfort, but Emily seemed to have none of that. She was at ease, and for the first time today, Alex realized that maybe it was okay for him to feel that way too. "Shall we?" she asked, her voice soft but confident. Alex nodded, motioning toward the entrance. The moment they stepped inside, the grandeur of the venue took over. The massive chandeliers above cast a soft glow on the opulent interior, and the sound of quiet chatter filled the air. Every inch of the space screamed wealth, and Alex couldn't help but feel out of place even with the polished exterior of his tuxedo. Emily, however, seemed unfazed. She moved easily through the crowd, her presence calm and collected. It was almost as if she belonged here as much as anyone else, even though Alex knew she didn't. She didn't have the right connections, the right status, but there she was, walking beside him like she belonged in a room full of strangers. Alex couldn't help but watch her as they made their way through the guests. She wasn't faking anything. She wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't. She was simply herself. That, he realized, was what made her so intriguing. In a world where everyone was always playing a role, Emily was refreshingly real. As they reached the main gathering area, Alex noticed a few familiar faces. His ex-wife's family, old friends, people he hadn't spoken to in years. The weight of their gazes made him uncomfortable, but he quickly adjusted. He was no longer the man who had once been married to his ex. He was just a man at a wedding, a man with a stranger by his side. But with Emily there, he didn't feel so alone. "You seem pretty comfortable with all of this," Alex said, trying to start a conversation to distract himself from the pressure he felt. Emily glanced around, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I guess you could say I've learned to adapt," she said. "I've never been to a wedding quite like this before, but it's not so different from the other events I've attended. People are people, after all." Alex nodded, impressed by her perspective. She had an ease about her that made the whole evening seem more bearable. She wasn't intimidated by the wealth, the status, the fake smiles. She was simply present, and that was more than he could say for himself. As the night went on, Emily and Alex made their way through the event, chatting and mingling with the guests. Alex was surprised at how well things were going. The evening didn't feel like a struggle. Instead, it felt like a reprieve, a chance for him to be someone else, even if just for a few hours. But despite the ease with which they interacted, there was an underlying tension that Alex couldn't shake. The evening was starting to drag, the conversations growing repetitive. The drinks were flowing and the people were dancing, but Alex's mind kept drifting back to Emily. He couldn't figure it out. Why was he so drawn to her? It wasn't just her beauty, although that was certainly there. It was something deeper, something he couldn't name. He caught himself watching her as she laughed with a small group of guests, her eyes sparkling with genuine amusement. Her laughter was infectious, and for the first time that night, Alex allowed himself to smile. Maybe this wasn't so bad after all. The night was moving on, and despite the overwhelming opulence of the venue, Alex felt an unexpected sense of ease. Maybe it was because Emily had a way of blending in without drawing attention to herself. She moved through the crowd with a quiet grace, engaging in conversation with people she had never met, making them feel comfortable and at ease. It was as though she was a part of this world despite not belonging to it, and Alex couldn't help but admire her for that. He had to admit it, he was beginning to enjoy himself. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was part of something, even though it wasn't his world. The wedding had felt like a circus at first, something he didn't want to be a part of. But now, surrounded by Emily's calm presence, it didn't feel so bad. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't. She was just there, being herself, and it made Alex feel like he could do the same. At one point, they found themselves standing near the bar, both taking a break from the hustle and bustle of the evening. Alex glanced over at Emily, who was sipping her drink and chatting with a guest. She was relaxed, laughing at something the man had said, and Alex couldn't help but be drawn to the way she lit up when she laughed. Her eyes sparkled with amusement, and the smile that stretched across her face seemed completely genuine. "Having fun?" Alex asked, his voice soft but curious. He wasn't sure why he asked. Maybe it was because he wanted to make sure she was having a good time, even though she had been thrown into this world so suddenly. Emily turned to him, a small but bright smile on her face. "More than I expected, actually," she said. "I wasn't sure how I would fit in, but it's not so bad. People are nicer than I thought they'd be." Alex chuckled. "Yeah, sometimes they can surprise you." She gave him a curious glance. "You don't seem to enjoy this world much. You're kind of distant from it." Alex froze for a moment, surprised by her insight. He had assumed she wouldn't notice. He wasn't exactly trying to hide his discomfort, but he also wasn't opening up about it either. But there she was, seeing right through him. He didn't know how to respond at first, but then he shrugged, his gaze dropping to his glass. "I've been in this world for so long that it doesn't feel like anything special anymore. It's just people playing a part, pretending to be something they're not." Emily nodded slowly. "I get that. I've been to enough corporate events and social gatherings to know that it's all about appearances." She paused, her eyes studying him for a second. "But you're different, you know." Alex blinked, unsure of what she meant. "Different how?" She smiled, tilting her head as if considering how to explain. "You don't seem like the others here. It's like you're out of place, but you're still trying. You've got this whole polished image, but I can tell there's more to you than what's on the surface." Alex didn't know how to respond to that. Part of him wanted to argue, to explain that he was just like anyone else, trying to fit into a world that demanded perfection. But another part of him, a part he hadn't acknowledged in a long time, felt a strange sense of relief. Emily saw through the polished exterior, saw him as something more than the CEO, the businessman, the ex-husband. "It's hard to explain," he finally said. "I've spent so much of my life trying to live up to expectations. Others' expectations, society's expectations. And now I don't know who I am outside of that anymore." Emily gave him a thoughtful look, her expression softening. "I think I understand. It's like being stuck in a role you never really asked for." She paused, her gaze drifting toward the dance floor where couples were swaying to the music. "But you don't have to play a part for me, you know." Alex looked at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "What do you mean?" She shrugged lightly. "I mean, I'm just here to have a good time, just like you. No judgment. No pretending." Her words hit him harder than he expected. They were simple, yet they struck a chord deep inside him. Alex realized that for the first time in a long time, he wasn't trying to impress her or anyone else. She wasn't interested in his money, his success, or his past. She was simply interested in him, and for some reason that made him feel both vulnerable and free at the same time. As they stood there, talking and laughing, Alex's nerves slowly began to dissolve. He was starting to feel like he could breathe again, like he could let go of the weight that had been on his shoulders for so long. And all of it was because of Emily. She had shown him in such a subtle way that it was okay to be real, to be imperfect. It was a small thing, but it meant everything to him. "Thanks for coming with me," he said quietly, his voice sincere. "I don't think I could have gotten through tonight without you." Emily smiled, her eyes warm. "You don't have to thank me. I'm glad I came. This is fun in its own way." For a moment, Alex just looked at her, feeling something stir inside him. Maybe it was because she was so different from everyone else he knew. Or maybe it was because she saw through all the layers he had built around himself. But whatever it was, Alex couldn't deny that there was something about her that pulled him in. As the night continued, they both let themselves get lost in the moment. They danced together, not worrying about how they looked or who was watching, but simply enjoying the rhythm of the music. Alex couldn't remember the last time he had felt so carefree. In a room full of strangers, surrounded by wealth and pretense, Emily had managed to make him feel like he belonged, even if it was just for a short while. Later in the evening, after the music had slowed and the crowd had started to thin out, Emily and Alex found a quiet corner away from the main hall. The soft hum of conversation in the background didn't reach them, and for the first time all night, Alex felt like he could truly relax. "I never thought I'd end up here," Emily said with a soft laugh. breaking the comfortable silence between them. At a wedding of all places. It's not exactly my usual scene, Alex grinned. Yeah, I'm not exactly the wedding type either. They both laughed, the sound easy and natural between them. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Alex realized that the night had turned out far better than he could have ever expected. Emily had become more than just his date for the evening. She had become the one person who had shown him what it meant to be real again. And in that moment, Alex couldn't help but wonder what the future might hold. The evening was winding down, and the energy in the venue had started to shift. The music had slowed, the laughter was quieter, and people were beginning to gather their things ready to head home. Alex glanced at Emily, who was standing by the large windows, her gaze focused on the night sky. The soft moonlight made her appear almost ethereal, and for a moment Alex felt a pang of something unfamiliar. As the night had gone on, he had found himself more and more drawn to her. The way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she seemed completely at ease in a world that felt so foreign to him, it all made him feel things he hadn't in years. Emily wasn't just someone who had come with him to the wedding to help him save face. She had become someone who made him rethink everything he thought he knew about himself, about his life. She caught his eye and smiled, and Alex felt his heart skip a beat. She walked over to where he stood and tilted her head slightly as if studying him. "Hey," she said softly, "you look like you're deep in thought." Alex chuckled, running a hand through his hair. "I guess I am. I've just been thinking about how this night turned out. I thought it would be awkward, uncomfortable, but I don't know. It's been different." She raised an eyebrow, a playful glint in her eyes. "In a good way, I hope?" "In a really good way," Alex said, his voice sincere. "I didn't expect to feel so, well, at ease. I've been to events like this before, but tonight it just feels different." Emily smiled, her eyes softening. "I'm glad I could make it easier for you," she said, her tone light but with a hint of warmth. The truth was, Emily had done far more than just make the night easier. She had made him feel like he wasn't alone in a room full of strangers. She had shown him that it was okay to let his guard down, even if just for a little while. As they stood there, the evening's festivities winding down, Alex realized how much he had come to enjoy her company. There was something about her that made everything feel more real, more genuine. She wasn't concerned with what he had or who he was, and that made all the difference. It was the kind of comfort he hadn't realized he was missing until he had it. Emily, noticing the sudden quiet between them, spoke again. "Are you okay? You've seemed a little quiet since the music slowed down." Alex smiled softly, his eyes locking onto hers. "Yeah, I'm just thinking. About the night, about everything that's happened. It's been a good evening." She nodded slowly, her expression softening in understanding. "I'm glad. I know it's a little odd, this whole thing. I mean, coming with you to your ex's wedding. It's not exactly something I've ever done before. But I'm happy I did. It's been nice being here with you." Alex's heart fluttered slightly at her words. She wasn't just being polite. There was something genuine in her voice, something that made him believe she wasn't just humoring him. She really did enjoy spending time with him. "Well," Alex said, "I can honestly say I'm happy you came with me. I think it would have been a lot harder to get through this night without you." Emily smiled, and for a brief moment Alex caught a glimpse of something in her eyes. It was subtle, but it was there. A spark, a connection. Something that wasn't just about being two people in the same place. It was the kind of look he had seen in movies or read about in books. But for the first time in his life, he felt it. It felt real. As the last few guests began to filter out, Alex felt a strange sense of reluctance. He wasn't ready for the night to end. He wasn't ready to let go of the feeling of being with someone who made him feel like himself, someone who didn't care about his status or wealth, someone who simply enjoyed his company. It was a rarity in his world, and he wasn't ready to let it slip away. "Hey," he said suddenly, his voice almost hesitant. "Do you want to grab a drink? I mean, not here, obviously, somewhere quieter. I don't know about you, but I don't want this night to end just yet." Emily looked at him, her expression softening as she considered his offer. She seemed to weigh the decision, her eyes searching his face as if trying to determine if he was being serious. After a moment, she nodded. "I'd like that," she said, her voice light but with a touch of sincerity. Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. It wasn't much, but it was enough. A simple request, a simple moment. but it meant more to him than he could express. They left the venue together, walking out into the cool night air. The city was quieter now, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by the soft hum of distant traffic and the occasional sound of footsteps echoing on the sidewalk. The lights from the buildings above cast long shadows, and for the first time that night Alex felt like he could breathe. He wasn't walking through this world of high society and polished appearances anymore. He was simply walking just like anyone else with someone who made him. They found a small bar not far from the venue. It was quiet, the kind of place where people could talk without shouting over loud music. The bartender greeted them with a nod, and they found a corner booth. The mood was casual, easy, and Alex felt himself relax even further as he settled into the booth across from Emily. "What's on your mind?" Emily asked after a few moments, her eyes searching his face. Alex shrugged. "I don't know, just everything, I guess. I've been thinking about how much of my life has been about work, about appearances, about being someone people expect me to be. But tonight was different." "You made it different?" Emily's gaze softened and she took a sip of her drink before responding. "I'm glad I could help you see things differently. I don't think anyone should have to live up to expectations all the time. Sometimes it's okay to just be yourself." Alex nodded slowly, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. He wasn't sure if he was ready to make major changes in his life, but tonight had shown him that it was okay to let go of the image he had so carefully constructed. He could be more than just the successful CEO. He could be someone else, too, someone real. As they continued to talk, the connection between them seemed to grow stronger, and Alex realized that for the first time in a long time, he wasn't just playing a role. He was just a man, sitting at a bar with someone who made him feel like he was enough just as he was. The days following the wedding felt like a blur for Alex. The moment he had left the bar with Emily, something had shifted in him. He found himself thinking about her more than he ever expected. It wasn't just about the way she made him feel in the moment. It was the way she had opened his eyes to something he had been missing for years. He had been so focused on the surface of life, his wealth, his success, the image he needed to maintain, that he had forgotten what it felt like to simply be himself, to care about things that truly mattered. Emily hadn't been like the other women he knew. She hadn't looked at him with wide eyes, impressed by the power and money he commanded. She hadn't tried to push him into a corner with expectations. She had simply been there in the moment with him, enjoying the simplicity of the evening. And somehow that had meant more to Alex than anything else. As the week passed, Alex found himself texting her, calling her, something he hadn't done in years. He wasn't sure where this connection was going, but he knew he wanted to find out. He was beginning to realize that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the man he thought he was. Maybe there was more to life than the constant pressure to perform and impress. One evening, after a busy day of meetings and conference calls, Alex sat at his desk, staring at the screen in front of him. But his thoughts kept drifting back to Emily. He hadn't heard from her all day, and for the first time he realized how much he missed talking to her. He picked up his phone and sent her a quick text. "Hey, are you free for dinner tonight? I'd love to see you again." It wasn't long before his phone buzzed with a reply. "I'd love that. How about 7? A smile tugged at the corners of Alex's lips as he typed his response. It's a date. That evening, they met at a small restaurant in the city. It wasn't a place filled with elaborate decorations or extravagant menus. It was simple, with a warm ambiance and the kind of food that reminded Alex of the comfort of home. Emily arrived looking as effortless as always, her smile lighting up the room when she saw him. She was dressed casually, but it suited her more than any formal gown ever could. "I'm glad you called," she said as they hugged, her eyes sparkling with that same warmth Alex had seen in her the other night. "I've been thinking about our last conversation." Alex chuckled. "Yeah, me too. I've been thinking about a lot of things lately." They sat down and the conversation flowed easily between them. There was no pressure, no expectation of anything more than just being in each other's company. They laughed, talked about their lives, and shared stories that made Alex feel like he was opening up in a way he never had before. It was as if Emily had unlocked a part of him that had been buried for too long. "You know," Emily said, taking a sip of her wine, "I'm really glad we met. I never thought I'd end up in this world, but it's been kind of refreshing." I don't usually meet people like you. Alex raised an eyebrow. What do you mean by that? She smiled, setting her glass down. You're not like the others. You don't care about the image, the money, or the status. It's nice to see someone who isn't trying to be something they're not. Alex took a deep breath, feeling a warmth spread through him. That's because I don't have to. I've spent so much of my life chasing after things that didn't matter, trying to impress people who didn't really care. But with you, I don't have to be that person. I can just be me. There was a long pause as Emily looked at him, her expression softening. I like the real you, she said quietly. The sincerity in her voice caught Alex off guard, and for a moment he found himself lost in her gaze. He wasn't sure what was happening between them, but he knew one thing for sure. He wanted to find out. He wanted to see where this could go, to explore this connection that felt different from anything he had ever experienced before. After dinner, they walked outside into the cool night air. The city was quiet, the lights twinkling like stars against the dark sky. It felt like the perfect moment, and Alex found himself not wanting it to end. They walked down the street, their footsteps in sync as they talked about everything and nothing. I've been thinking, Alex said, breaking the silence. Maybe we should take a weekend trip. Just the two of us. Somewhere quiet where we can just get away from everything for a little while. Emily looked at him, her eyes reflecting the soft light of the street lamps. That sounds perfect, she said with a smile. I'd love that. As they continued walking, Alex felt a sense of peace that he hadn't known in years. The pressure he had felt for so long, the weight of expectations seemed to lift with every step. With Emily, he didn't have to pretend. He didn't have to be anyone other than who he was. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. The weekend trip came sooner than Alex had anticipated. They decided to visit a small cabin by the lake, a place far from the city's noise and chaos. It was a retreat from the world, and it felt right. They spent the days hiking through the woods, talking for hours by the water, and enjoying the simplicity of being together without distractions. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Alex turned to Emily, his heart beating a little faster than usual. Emily, he said softly, I never thought I'd find someone like you. I've spent so much of my life thinking I had to be someone I wasn't, and then you came along and everything just feels different, better. Emily smiled, her eyes warm and gentle. I feel the same way. Sometimes you meet someone who just changes everything. I think we're that for each other. They sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of their words sink in. Alex felt a sense of peace wash over him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't just about finding someone to share his life with. It was about finding someone who made him feel like he could finally be himself. As the weekend came to an end, Alex realized that this wasn't just a fleeting connection. It was something deeper, something real. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time he was excited to find out. When they returned to the city, Alex knew that he had changed. He wasn't the same man who had walked into that wedding with Emily as his date. He was someone new, someone who understood the value of authenticity, of real connections, and of living a life that wasn't defined by expectations. And as he looked at Emily, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened, they were on this journey together. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. The weeks that followed their weekend getaway felt like a new chapter in both Alex and Emily's lives. Everything seemed to slow down in the best way possible, and Alex, once overwhelmed by the constant demands of his business and the expectations of his social circle, found himself focusing on what truly mattered. Emily had changed him, not just in the way he saw the world, but in the way he saw himself. The man who had once been defined by his accomplishments, his wealth, and his image, was now realizing that those things didn't hold the same weight anymore. Emily had a way of making everything feel simple, without complicating things. Whether it was a quiet evening at home, a walk through the park, or a dinner at a small local restaurant, she had a way of making every moment feel meaningful. There was no need to impress each other. They were simply there, present in the moment. That, more than anything, felt like a gift. But of course, life wasn't without its challenges. And it wasn't long before Alex faced a situation that tested the peace he had worked so hard to build. One evening, while he was at his office, he received a call from his lawyer. The tone in the lawyer's voice immediately set him on edge. Alex, we need to talk. Your ex-wife is pushing to revisit the terms of the divorce settlement. Alex's mind raced. After everything that had happened, the heartbreak, the business pressure, the endless rounds of negotiations, he had thought the worst was behind him. But it seemed the past wasn't finished with him yet. Why? What's going on? Alex's voice was sharp, though he tried to remain calm. The lawyer explained that his ex-wife, noticing Alex's success, had decided that the original terms of their divorce weren't enough. She wanted more money, more assets, and she was ready to take the matter to court if necessary. Alex let out a frustrated sigh. He had worked hard to move forward, to build something new, something real with Emily. But now it felt like everything he had worked for was about to be dragged back into the mess of his past. Look, I don't have time for this, Alex said, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. I've moved on, and I'm not going to let this destroy what I've built. Let's figure out a way to make this go away. The lawyer hesitated. I understand, Alex, but you need to prepare for a fight. She's not going to let this go easily. As the call ended, Alex sat in silence for a moment. His mind raced through 1,000 thoughts, mostly about how much his ex-wife's demands felt like a personal attack. But there was something else too, a nagging feeling that this wasn't just about money. It was about control, about her desire to keep him tethered to a past he had fought so hard to escape. Alex stood up from his desk and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. The lights flickered in the distance, and for a moment he felt the weight of everything on his shoulders. He had worked so hard to get to this point, to move on from his past and start fresh, but now it seemed like it was all being threatened again. What hurt the most, however, was that Emily wasn't involved in this. She had no part in the battles he had fought before her, the ones that had left him emotionally bruised and exhausted. And now, as much as he wanted to protect her from all of this, he knew he couldn't. Taking a deep breath, Alex realized that he had to face this, not just for himself, but for the future he wanted with Emily. He couldn't let the past define him anymore. He couldn't let it taint what he had built with her.